You see Atlas, a magnificent Great Dane, lying perfectly still in the overgrown grass of the abandoned city park. His coat, a deep midnight black, absorbs the weak morning light, making him almost invisible against the shadows. His head is low, nestled between enormous paws, but even from this distance, you can feel the profound sadness emanating from him, a silent plea in the depths of his dark eyes. You'd never imagine what this dog has been through, or how his silent burden will change how you see friendship. Before you dive into the story, hit like and subscribe if you love dogs, and let us know in the comments below. What's your favorite dog story? Or tell us about your own beloved pet. Alara, a young artist with a sketchbook more often in her hand than a phone, had been observing Atlas for weeks. She called him Atlas because he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his broad shoulders. He was always there, in the forgotten corner of what was once a grand public park, now just a wild tangle of overgrown bushes and crumbling pathways. He was immense, a creature of staggering size, but he moved with a hesitant grace, a ghost of his former self. His presence was a stark contrast to the vibrant splashes of color Alara usually sought for her urban landscapes. Yet, something about his quiet, profound sorrow resonated with her own unspoken feelings. She was a solitary figure herself, finding solace in the silent artistry of the world. She never approached him too closely, respecting the invisible barrier he seemed to erect around himself. He never barked, never growled, never even lifted his head to acknowledge her presence. He simply existed, a monumental shadow etched against the indifferent backdrop of the city. Alara found herself drawn to him, not out of pity, but out of a shared sense of profound solitude. She'd sit on a distant, broken bench, sketching his form, trying to capture the quiet tragedy in his stillness. His stillness spoke volumes. It was not repose, but a profound reluctance to move, as if any sudden motion might shatter something fragile within him. One damp afternoon, as a fine drizzle began to fall, Alara noticed a subtle tremor run through Atlas's massive frame. He didn't move, but the tremor intensified, a shiver that went deeper than just the cold. She realized then that dogs, with their highly developed sensory perception, often experience environmental changes or internal discomforts with a heightened sensitivity that humans might miss. This quiet shivering, a visible manifestation of his internal struggle, was a unique, complex emotional moment for Alara. It was the first glimpse beneath his stoic exterior, a raw display of vulnerability that pierced through her artistic detachment. What truly causes such profound stillness in a creature meant for motion? Alara found herself, against her usual non-interventionist nature, digging through her backpack. She pulled out a large, worn artist's smock, thick canvas and waterproof. It wasn't much, but it was something. She walked slowly, cautiously, towards Atlas, her heart thudding a nervous rhythm against her ribs. He still didn't move, didn't even lift his head, as she gently laid the smock over his immense back. She felt the warmth radiating from his body, the tremor beneath the fabric. She retreated just as slowly, returning to her bench, her gaze fixed on him. He remained motionless, but a tiny part of her hoped he felt the slight warmth, the gesture of quiet comfort. It was a subtle humor, this act of an artist using her protective clothing to shield a monumental dog. The next day, the smock was still draped over him, undisturbed. He hadn't moved. A profound observation struck Alara. Atlas was not simply resting, he was waiting. His stillness wasn't lethargy. It was a vigil, a profound reluctance to engage with a world that had perhaps hurt him deeply. He carried a secret burden that only love could lift, though Alara was only just beginning to grasp the enormity of it. She started bringing a thermos of warm, unsweetened tea for herself and a small, clean bowl of fresh water for him. She'd place it near the smock, always a respectful distance away, and then retreat. He never drank while she watched, but the bowl was always empty when she returned the next day. This silent ritual, this unspoken agreement, began to chip away at the edges of Alara's own solitude. She found herself talking to him in soft murmurs as she sketched, describing the colors of the sky, the shapes of the clouds, the way the city lights began to twinkle at dusk. She knew he couldn't understand the words, but she hoped he felt the gentle presence, the steady rhythm of her voice. It was a strange, beautiful paradox, a quiet connection forged in profound silence between a woman who painted the world and a dog who carried its weight. Remember the vibrant world Alara usually sought? Now, the muted tones of this neglected park and the silent presence of Atlas held more depth and meaning than any canvas. The rain-soaked smock became a silent agreement between Alara and Atlas. Each morning, she would arrive to find it still draped over his massive frame, a testament to his unwavering stillness. And each morning, as she placed fresh water and a small portion of kibble near him, she'd notice the bowl empty when she returned the next day. It was a subtle exchange of trust, built on consistency and respect for his boundaries. She never saw him eat, never saw him move from his spot, but the evidence was always there. It was a peculiar dance, this slow, silent ballet between an artist and her enigmatic subject. One breezy afternoon, Alara was sketching a particularly gnarled oak tree, her focus intense. A sudden, sharp crack, like a branch snapping, echoed through the park. Alara barely flinched, accustomed to the city's cacophony, but Atlas, usually so placid, reacted violently. His enormous body lurched, his legs scrambling for purchase, and he let out a guttural whimper, pressing himself against the earth as if trying to disappear. His eyes, when they met Alara's, were wide with an unreasoning terror, a profound fear that seemed to pull him back to a distant, unseen moment. This intense flinching, a visceral response to a seemingly innocuous sound, was a unique, complex emotional moment for Alara. It was a raw glimpse into the depth of his secret burden. How deep do emotional scars truly run, especially when they are unseen? Alara immediately put down her sketchbook and moved slowly towards him, her heart aching. She knelt a few feet away, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "It's okay, Atlas. Just a branch. You're safe." She kept her distance, respecting his obvious distress, but her voice was a steady anchor in his fear-filled world. She noticed that dogs often display displacement behaviors, like yawning or lip-licking, when experiencing stress, and a sudden, exaggerated flinch can indicate a past traumatic event associated with a specific sound. Atlas, trembling, subtly licked his nose repeatedly, his gaze darting nervously. This was more than just being startled. This was a deep, ingrained fear response. She continued to talk, softly, gently, until the tremors in his body began to subside. It took a long time, longer than she expected, for him to fully relax. When he finally looked at her again, the terror in his eyes had receded, replaced by a lingering vulnerability. In that moment, Alara felt a fierce protectiveness bloom within her. She realized that Atlas carried not just a physical weight, but an invisible emotional one, a heavy shroud of past trauma. It was a subtle humor, this artist, usually so focused on capturing beauty, now trying to soothe a giant dog's hidden terrors. From that day forward, Alara became hyper-aware of sounds. She found herself subconsciously identifying potential triggers: distant sirens, the bang of a dumpster lid, the sharp report of a car backfiring. She would instinctively place herself between Atlas and the source of the noise, or offer a soothing word before the sound even fully registered to him. It was an unspoken promise, a commitment to his fragile peace. She also started bringing a soft, thick blanket, not just the smock, laying it out for him, a small gesture of comfort against the cold ground and the unseen terrors. Remember the gentle drizzle that first moved Alara to act? The rain was now replaced by the sharper, more painful echoes of Atlas's hidden past. Her sketches began to reflect this new understanding. No longer just a stoic silhouette, Atlas now appeared in her drawings with a nuanced vulnerability, his eyes telling stories of unspoken pain and quiet resilience. She was no longer just observing. She was attempting to understand. The park, once a backdrop for her art, became a living, breathing sanctuary, a place where profound healing might just be possible. One evening, as dusk settled, Alara prepared to leave. She looked at Atlas, who was now resting more calmly on the new blanket. She murmured her usual goodbyes, a habit born of their silent connection. As she turned to walk away, she heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, like a sigh. She paused, looking back. Atlas had lifted his head, his dark eyes fixed on her. Then, slowly, with immense effort, he stretched out a massive paw, extending it towards her, his large paw pad resting gently on the edge of the blanket. It was a small gesture, almost a fleeting moment, but it was a clear invitation, a hesitant bridge built across the chasm of his fear. It was the first spark of connection, a fragile offering of trust. Does trust begin with grand gestures, or with these quiet, profound invitations? Alara felt a rush of emotion, awe, compassion, and a burgeoning sense of hope. She knew then that their connection was deepening, moving beyond silent observation into something more tangible. Atlas was not just enduring, he was beginning to reach out. His secret burden was still there, she knew, but perhaps, just perhaps, it wasn't meant to be carried alone forever. The tentative extension of Atlas's paw, that silent invitation, marked a turning point. Alara felt a profound shift in their dynamic. It was no longer just about her observing him. He was now, in his own way, reaching out, acknowledging her presence not as a threat, but as a source of something akin to comfort. She didn't press the moment, simply offered a soft, reassuring murmur, her eyes meeting his for a long, quiet moment. The connection felt almost electric, a silent understanding passing between them. The next few days saw a subtle but significant change in Atlas. He began to respond to her voice, his head lifting when she spoke, his gaze tracking her movements. He even allowed her to place the water bowl closer. And one morning, she saw him take a tentative drink while she was still within his line of sight. These were monumental steps for a creature who had previously existed as a statue of sorrow. Alara found herself bringing treats now, small, easily digestible pieces of dried salmon that she would place carefully on the ground a few feet from him. He would wait until she retreated, but the treats always vanished. It was a subtle humor, this majestic dog slowly being won over by fishy snacks. One blustery afternoon, as Alara was sketching, a group of unruly boys, probably no older than 10, entered the park, kicking a deflated soccer ball and shouting. They spotted Atlas. "Look at the size of that dog!" one of them yelled, and they began to approach, emboldened by their numbers and a youthful lack of fear. Atlas, sensing their approach, stiffened. The familiar tremor began, and he flattened himself to the ground, his eyes wide with renewed terror, though he made no sound. He wasn't aggressive. He was simply petrified. Alara's heart pounded. She instinctively moved. Before she even fully processed her actions, she stood between Atlas and the approaching boys, her arms outstretched, a silent, defiant shield. "Leave him alone," she said, her voice firmer than she thought possible. The boys, startled by her unexpected intervention, hesitated. They looked from her determined stance to the huge, cowering dog behind her. This unexpected act of protection from Alara was a unique, complex emotional moment for both her and Atlas. For Alara, it was a sudden, powerful realization of her profound connection to him. For Atlas, it was the first time someone had actively stood for him. What truly defines courage? Is it a roar or a quiet, unwavering stand? The boys, sensing her resolve and perhaps intimidated by the sheer size of the cowering dog behind her, muttered amongst themselves and then veered off, disappearing back into the city streets. As their voices faded, Alara slowly turned to Atlas. He was still trembling, but his eyes, when they met hers, held an expression of profound gratitude. He slowly, painstakingly, pushed himself to a sitting position, then, with an enormous effort, nudged his head gently against her outstretched hand. It was the first time he had initiated physical contact, a soft, warm pressure that sent a jolt of pure emotion through Alara. This simple act of mutual reliance, Atlas allowing her to protect him and then offering this quiet acknowledgement, solidified their bond in a way no words ever could. It highlighted a deep factual detail about dog behavior. When a dog feels safe and protected by a human, especially after experiencing trauma, their capacity for loyalty and affection deepens profoundly, leading to acts of trust previously deemed impossible. It was a powerful exchange, a silent promise made and accepted. Remember the shadow Atlas cast in the park, a symbol of his isolation? Now that shadow was subtly beginning to intertwine with Alara's. From that day forward, Atlas began to meet Alara closer to the park entrance. He would still lie down, but his body language was less tense, more open. He even allowed her to gently stroke his head, his fur surprisingly soft beneath her fingers. She spent longer hours with him now, sometimes simply sitting in comfortable silence, sketching, while Atlas rested beside her, his large body a warm, reassuring presence. She noticed him sighing sometimes, a deep, contented sound that spoke of peace. It made her wonder if, in his colossal frame, he wasn't just carrying a burden, but also a boundless capacity for love waiting to be unearthed. With trust slowly blossoming, Atlas began to reveal more of his subtle cues, a silent language that Alara meticulously learned to interpret. He would nudge her hand not just for affection, but to direct her attention to something specific, a patch of sunlight, a distant squirrel, or more often, a hidden corner of the park he wished to explore. These were not demands, but gentle suggestions, invitations to share his world. Alara, once content with her familiar routes, now found joy in following Atlas's lead, allowing his silent desires to shape their daily wanderings. It was a subtle humor, this towering dog acting as a tour guide for the human who thought she knew every inch of the park. One crisp autumn morning, Atlas led her deeper into a seldom visited section of the park, a dense grove of ancient trees. His pace was slow, his head low, sniffing intently at the leaf-strewn ground. Suddenly, he stopped, his body rigid, a low, sorrowful whine escaping him. His gaze was fixed on a crumbling, ivy-covered stone wall, almost hidden by the undergrowth. Alara looked at the wall, seeing nothing out of the ordinary, but Atlas's distress was palpable. He pressed himself against her leg, his immense frame trembling, and then let out a heartbroken whimper, a sound of profound loss and sadness. This was a unique, complex, emotional moment for Alara, witnessing the raw grief of a creature grappling with an unseen memory. What past sorrow could be so deeply etched into the heart of a dog? Alara knelt, placing a comforting hand on Atlas's head. She felt the vibrations of his deep, mournful cries. It was clear that this specific spot, this innocuous stone wall, held a powerful, painful memory for him. She realized then that dogs have remarkable long-term spatial memory, often associating specific locations with powerful emotional experiences, whether positive or traumatic. Atlas wasn't just reacting to a sight. He was reliving a moment. She whispered soothing words, stroking his thick fur, her presence a steady anchor in his distress. Slowly, Atlas's tremors subsided. He leaned heavily into her, and then, with a deep, shuddering sigh, he turned his head and gently licked her hand, a gesture of profound gratitude for her unwavering presence. He didn't want to leave the spot immediately, instead sitting down, gazing at the wall with a lingering sorrow. Alara sat with him, in silent communion, allowing him to process whatever painful memory this place evoked. She wondered about the details of his secret burden, the story behind his deep sadness and intense fears. What had happened here? Her empathy for Atlas deepened immeasurably. She understood that his past wasn't just a collection of events. It was a living, breathing part of him, subtly influencing his present. She resolved to be his silent witness, his steadfast companion as he navigated these echoes of a painful history. Remember the profound sadness Alara first sensed in Atlas? It was now manifesting in concrete, heartbreaking ways, solidifying her commitment to him. As days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger, fortified by shared moments of quiet understanding and the gradual unveiling of Atlas's vulnerabilities. He began to respond to his name with a joyful wag of his tail, his eyes sparkling with a glimmer of the light that had been missing. He even started to initiate playful nudges, pushing his large head into her hand for affection, or pawing gently at her arm when he wanted attention. These were small, yet monumental steps towards a joyful existence. One particularly sunny afternoon, as they sat together in the park, Alara noticed a young couple with a small, yappy terrier approaching. Normally, Atlas would shrink away, but this time, he simply observed. When the terrier barked shrilly at him, Atlas merely tilted his head, a thoughtful expression on his face, then looked at Alara as if to say, "Isn't that amusing?" It was a quiet display of growing confidence, a subtle indication that he was learning to distinguish between true threats and harmless nuisances. He was slowly shedding the weight of his past, finding comfort and security in Alara's unwavering love. Is healing a destination or a continuous journey of small, brave steps? The stone wall in the ancient grove became a silent testament to Atlas's slow, arduous journey of healing. Alara often found him gazing at it, no longer with the raw terror of their first encounter, but with a quiet, contemplative sadness. She would sit beside him, a steady, comforting presence, allowing him the space to revisit his memories without fear of judgment. She instinctively understood that for dogs, much like humans, confronting past trauma is a crucial step towards true healing, and a supportive, non-pressuring environment is essential for this process. This shared contemplation, this silent witnessing of his pain, was a profound emotional moment, deepening their unique bond. One afternoon, as they sat by the wall, a sudden, sharp crackle of static erupted from a nearby hidden speaker, part of an old, defunct public address system in the park. It was a jarring sound, unexpected, and loud. Atlas immediately flinched, his body tensing, but instead of cowering, he let out a low, mournful howl, a sound filled with an agonizing despair. It was a sound Alara had never heard from him, a raw expression of grief that tore at her heart. She wrapped her arms around his massive neck, pulling him close, murmuring reassurances as he trembled against her. This raw, vocalized pain was a significant breakthrough. He was no longer just internalizing his fear, but expressing it. As the static faded, Alara looked around, her eyes scanning for the source. Her gaze fell upon a small, rusted metal box almost entirely hidden by ivy on the stone wall. Curiosity, mixed with a growing certainty, propelled her forward. She carefully peeled back the thick vines, revealing an old, weather-beaten plaque beneath the box. The inscription was faded but discernible. Memorial for valued K9 unit, Officer Shadow and his handler, Officer Davis. Lost in the line of duty, October 12, 20XX. Below the names, a faint image of a border collie, strikingly similar to Atlas, was barely visible. Alara felt a cold chill despite the mild air. Atlas's grief, his profound connection to this spot, suddenly made chilling sense. Officer Davis. Shadow. The crackle of static. Could Atlas have been a police dog? The possibility was staggering. This discovery was a complex, unexpected revelation that provided a dramatic answer to the enigma of his secret burden. Her heart went out to him even more fiercely. It was a subtle sarcasm, the notion that a dog could carry such a specific, human-like trauma of loss. She continued to research, discreetly. She visited the local library, poring over old newspaper archives. She found articles detailing a tragic incident years ago. A police pursuit through this very park, a shootout, and the devastating loss of a dedicated K9 officer and his handler. The K9's name was indeed Shadow, a border collie mix known for his courage and keen senses. The description of Shadow, his size, his coat, even a distinct pattern of white on his chest, matched Atlas perfectly. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, painting a heartbreaking picture. Atlas was Shadow. He hadn't just witnessed a trauma, he had lived it, surviving something that had taken his partner, leaving him with an unfathomable grief and deep-seated fear of loud, sudden noises. This deep factual detail about dog behavior and the human-dog bond revealed itself fully. The bond between working dogs, like police K9s, and their handlers is incredibly profound, often described as an unbreakable partnership. The loss of a handler can lead to deep, lasting psychological trauma in the dog, manifesting as grief, fear, or even a profound sense of loss of purpose. Atlas wasn't merely a stray. He was a hero, a survivor carrying the ghost of his past, a past entwined with immense loyalty and devastating loss. What greater burden can a living creature bear than the memory of a fallen companion? Alara looked at Atlas with new eyes, filled with profound respect and sorrow. His massive frame, which she had initially thought was burdened by physical hardship, was, in fact, weighed down by an invisible cloak of grief and a memory too painful to forget. The sudden sounds, the flinching, the profound sadness, it all made tragic sense. He hadn't just lost a human. He had lost his world, his purpose, his other half. Remember the initial melancholy Alara sensed in Atlas? It was now understood as a heroic, heartbreaking sorrow. She made a quiet promise to him then, a silent vow to help him carry his burden, to show him that even after such a profound loss, a new purpose, a new love, was possible. She would help him find peace to unburden his noble heart. The revelation of Atlas's past, his true identity as Shadow, a K9 officer who had endured an unimaginable loss, transformed Alara's understanding of him entirely. He wasn't just a sad, large dog. He was a silent hero, a survivor carrying the scars of a devastating sacrifice. The weight he bore was not just the memory of a fallen partner, Officer Davis, but the profound grief of a purpose violently taken away. Every flinch, every quiet whimper, now made heartbreaking sense. Alara's initial compassion deepened into an immense respect and a fierce determination to help him find peace. She realized that for many working dogs, their identity and sense of self are deeply intertwined with their handler and their assigned duties. The loss of either can lead to a profound identity crisis and emotional trauma. This deepened understanding was a powerful, unique emotional moment, confirming the depth of Atlas's secret burden. With this new knowledge, Alara began to tailor her interactions with Atlas. She started bringing small, sturdy police-themed chew toys, subtly leaving them near him. She'd quietly talk about Officer Davis and Shadow's bravery, never expecting a response, simply offering the comfort of acknowledgement. Atlas would sometimes nuzzle the toys, or simply listen, his eyes holding a faraway look. It was a subtle, almost sacred ritual, a way of honoring his past while gently guiding him towards a new future. It was a gentle humor, this artist trying to provide closure for a canine veteran. One day, while they were near the stone memorial, a loud, sudden clap of thunder ripped through the sky, signaling an approaching storm. Atlas immediately tensed, his body dropping, a low, terrified whine escaping him. His eyes darted wildly, seeking an escape that wasn't there. Alara, remembering the details of his past, knew this was a direct echo of the shootout that had taken his partner. This was not just fear. It was a reliving of trauma. She dropped to her knees, pulling his massive head into her lap, shielding his ears with her hands, speaking in urgent, soothing whispers. "It's okay, Atlas. You're safe. I've got you. Davis would want you to be safe." The mention of his handler's name, coupled with Alara's physical presence and unwavering reassurance, had an almost miraculous effect. Atlas still trembled, but he leaned into her, pressing his body against hers. His whines softened, becoming long, shuddering sighs. He wasn't entirely free of the fear, but he was no longer alone in it. This monumental leap of trust, Atlas allowing himself to be vulnerable and comforted in the face of his deepest terror, was a breakthrough moment. He chose to trust Alara to carry a piece of his fear, demonstrating an incredible capacity for resilience and an unspoken, profound loyalty. Was Atlas truly choosing to let go, or was he simply finding a new anchor in a storm? As the thunder rumbled distantly, Alara felt Atlas's immense weight against her, a physical manifestation of his secret burden. But now, she felt less overwhelmed by it and more determined. She understood that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about building new, stronger foundations in the present. This was the core of their shared vulnerability. Alara, with her own quiet struggles, was helping Atlas navigate his public trauma, and in doing so, she was finding her own strength. Remember how Atlas once seemed to carry the weight of the world? Now, Alara was helping him share that burden. The storm eventually passed, leaving behind a fresh, clean scent and a sense of calm. Atlas, though still subdued, had clearly made a significant step forward. He stayed close to Alara for the rest of the day, his head often resting on her knee, a silent testament to his reliance on her presence. Alara saw a flicker of something new in his eyes. Not happiness, not yet, but a burgeoning sense of security, a fragile hope. From then on, Alara made a conscious effort to introduce small, controlled exposures to various sounds, always pairing them with calm reassurance and positive reinforcement. A distant car horn would be met with a gentle stroke, a quiet, "good boy." She started playing soft, calming music on her phone during their walks, subtly masking sharper noises. It was a slow, painstaking process, but she saw the gradual, almost imperceptible improvements. Atlas still flinched, but the recovery time was shorter, the fear less overwhelming. He was learning, with Alara's help, that not all loud sounds meant danger, that he was safe. As Atlas's internal landscape slowly began to heal, a new facet of his personality, long suppressed by trauma, started to emerge. A playful, almost puppy-like energy. He would initiate games, nudging a stray branch with his nose, then looking at Alara with an expectant glimmer in his eyes. He'd chase squirrels with a joyful abandon, his massive body moving with an agility that belied his previous stillness. Alara found immense delight in these moments, witnessing the profound transformation of a creature once consumed by sorrow. It was a subtle humor, this majestic, once somber dog rediscovering the simple joy of chasing small, furry things. Their walks extended beyond the park into the surrounding neighborhoods. Atlas, once fearful of new environments, now explored with a cautious curiosity, his nose twitching, taking in the myriad scents of the city. Alara made sure these excursions were always on quiet streets, away from heavy traffic or sudden loud noises. She saw him not just walking, but experiencing the world. His ears perked, his tail giving slow, thoughtful wags. He was no longer just enduring, he was living. One afternoon, while exploring a new street lined with charming old houses, Atlas suddenly stopped. His ears swiveled, his body tensing, not with fear, but with intense focus. He began to pull gently on his leash, guiding Alara towards a particular house with a small, well-tended garden. There, a frail, elderly woman sat on a porch swing, gazing wistfully at a framed photograph in her hands. As they approached, Atlas let out a soft, almost imperceptible whimper, a sound filled with profound recognition. He nudged Alara forward, then sat patiently at the edge of the garden, his gaze fixed on the woman. Alara felt a strange sense of déjà vu. She noticed the woman's hands trembling as she held the photo, her eyes rimmed with unshed tears. This profound emotional moment, the silent connection between Atlas and the grieving woman, highlighted a deep factual detail about dog behavior. Dogs possess an incredible capacity to sense and respond to human grief or emotional distress, often offering comfort through their calm presence or gentle gestures. Atlas wasn't just observing, he was empathizing. What unspoken connection binds these two souls across the years? As if drawn by an invisible thread, the woman looked up, her gaze falling upon Atlas. Her eyes widened, and a gasp escaped her lips. She slowly rose from the swing, her movements stiff with age, and took a hesitant step towards them. "Shadow?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Alara, stunned, realized the implication. This woman knew Atlas by his old name. The woman slowly approached, her eyes never leaving Atlas. When she was close enough, she reached out a trembling hand, stroking his massive head. Atlas, usually cautious with strangers, leaned into her touch, letting out a soft sigh, his eyes closing in apparent contentment. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she buried her face in his fur. "My brave Shadow," she sobbed. "You came back."
Alara, overwhelmed, introduced herself and gently explained Atlas's story, how she had found him, and the discovery of his past as Officer Shadow.
The woman, whose name was Eleanor, was Officer Davis's widow. She recounted the devastating day, the loss of her husband, and the disappearance of Shadow. She had never known what happened to him, clinging to a faint hope that he had survived. The sight of him, years later, alive and seemingly well, was a miracle. This unexpected encounter was the beginning of the unraveling of Atlas's specific past trauma, bringing a dramatic tension to their story. Eleanor shared stories of Officer Davis and Shadow, their unbreakable bond, their courage. She described Shadow as a fearless, loyal partner, always by her husband's side. She spoke of the crackle of their police radio, a sound that had been a constant backdrop to their lives, and the abrupt silence after that fateful day. Alara finally understood why the static sound had triggered such deep fear in Atlas. It was the sound of his world shattering. Remember the stone wall in the park? A place of sorrow for Atlas? This encounter with Eleanor, the person who shared his most painful memory, was a step towards truly unburdening that sorrow, adding a new layer to the narrative of his healing. The reunion between Atlas and Eleanor was a poignant blend of bittersweet remembrance and burgeoning hope. Eleanor, frail but invigorated by the unexpected sight of her husband's faithful K9, began visiting the park with Alara and Atlas. She would sit on a portable stool, her hand often resting on Atlas's massive head, sharing stories of Officer Davis, not just as a police officer, but as a kind man, a loving husband, and a devoted partner to Shadow. These narratives, filled with affection and respect, provided Alara with deeper insight into the formidable bond Atlas had lost. This emotional sharing was a unique, complex moment of communal healing, where grief was acknowledged and shared, subtly lessening its solitary burden. As Eleanor spoke, Atlas would often rest his head on her lap, his eyes fixed on her face, seemingly absorbing every word, every nuance of her tone. He responded to the familiar cadence of her voice, a gentle reminder of the past that no longer brought outright terror, but a quiet, almost reverent sadness. It became clear that hearing familiar voices and being in the presence of someone connected to their past can be a powerful emotional trigger for dogs, allowing them to process and integrate past experiences in a safe, supported environment. This process, while painful, was essential for Atlas to truly begin bearing the weight of his past, rather than merely being crushed by it. He was moving from pure reaction to contemplative remembrance. One blustery afternoon, as Eleanor recounted a particularly daring rescue operation that Officer Davis and Shadow had performed, a sudden piercing ambulance siren wailed in the distance, growing rapidly louder. Alara braced herself, expecting Atlas's usual terror, but this time something was different. Atlas flinched, his body tensed, but instead of cowering, he let out a low, almost mournful whine, then slowly, deliberately, walked towards Eleanor. He nudged her hand, then looked back towards the direction of the siren, his ears slightly perked, a curious expression on his face. He didn't run. He acknowledged it, and then sought comfort. This was a profound breakthrough, a monumental step in Atlas's healing journey. He was no longer solely defined by his fear. He was processing it, seeking reassurance, and remaining present. It was a visible manifestation of him unburdening himself. Eleanor, understanding the significance, gently stroked his head. "It's okay, Shadow," she whispered. "Davis is safe now, and so are you." This quiet reassurance, coupled with Atlas's brave new response, was a powerful display of hope and resilience. What truly defines freedom from the past? Forgetting it or confronting it with courage? Alara saw the profound impact of this new connection on Atlas. He began to exhibit more sustained periods of playfulness, his tail wagging with a broader, more joyful sweep. He still had his moments of quiet reflection by the stone memorial, but now there was a sense of peace in his stillness, rather than just sorrow. He was starting to integrate his past with his present, allowing the love and safety he now experienced to soften the sharp edges of his memories. Eleanor, too, found solace in Atlas's presence. She often remarked how he was a living link to her beloved husband, a tangible piece of the past that brought comfort instead of just pain. She began to share stories not just of loss, but of the joy and purpose Officer Davis and Shadow had shared. This shared storytelling, a gentle humor in recounting past escapades, was therapeutic for all three of them. Arthur, hearing about Alara's work with Atlas and Eleanor, reached out. He recognized a kindred spirit in Alara's dedication to a dog's emotional well-being, remembering his own journey with Alfie. He offered support, sharing his own experiences with quiet healing and the unexpected depth of the human-dog bond. Their shared understanding formed a new, subtle connection, adding another layer of warmth to Alara's expanding world. Remember the quiet park where Atlas once existed as a lone shadow? It was now a place of shared stories, healing connections, and burgeoning hope. With Eleanor's consistent presence and Alara's unwavering support, Atlas's transformation accelerated. He became more responsive, his once guarded eyes now frequently sparkling with curiosity and affection. He would greet Eleanor with a gentle nudge and a soft whine, a sound of deep contentment. The park, once his place of solitary vigil, became a vibrant space for shared memories and new joys. He even began to enjoy meeting other dogs, approaching them with a cautious but playful demeanor, a significant step for a dog who once shied away from all interaction. This newfound social ease was a subtle humor, seeing the former recluse of a dog now engaging with his canine peers. Alara and Eleanor started a small, informal initiative, inviting other dog owners to join them for walks in the park. They spoke about Atlas's story, the power of patience, and the profound impact of understanding a dog's past traumas. Many listened with empathetic interest, sharing their own experiences with rescued or fearful dogs. This became a quiet community of support, born from Atlas's journey. It highlighted a deep factual detail about dog behavior. When a dog, particularly one with a history of fear, observes calm and positive interactions with new people or animals, it can significantly aid their own socialization and build confidence. Atlas, once the one in need of healing, was now, in his quiet way, helping to heal others simply by being himself. One particularly sunny afternoon, as they walked, a large group of children from a nearby school spilled into the park, their laughter and excited shouts echoing through the trees. Normally, this level of sudden noise and chaotic movement would send Atlas into a panic. Alara tensed, ready to shield him, and Eleanor instinctively reached for his head. But Atlas, after a brief moment of hesitation, simply observed. His ears were perked. His tail gave a tentative wag, and he even leaned slightly into the sounds, a curious expression on his face. He watched the children with a newfound fascination, no longer fear. This was the unburdening light, a moment of profound recovery and joyful liberation. Atlas was not just tolerating the noise, he was almost engaging with it, no longer trapped in the echoes of his past. The weight of his secret burden, the trauma of the shootout, and the loss of his partner was visibly lifting. He was finding peace, truly finding freedom. It was a unique, complex emotional moment for Alara and Eleanor, witnessing the ultimate triumph of love over profound fear. What truly defines liberation? The absence of chains, or the courage to dance within them? Alara felt an overwhelming surge of pride and love for Atlas. He had faced his deepest fears, not through force, but through the gentle, persistent power of connection. He was a living testament to the transformative potential of empathy and patience. His journey wasn't just his own. It was a beacon of hope for any creature, human or animal, grappling with unseen wounds. Remember the solemn figure Alara first sketched in the park, burdened and still? He was now a dynamic, joyful participant in the symphony of life. Eleanor, seeing Atlas's freedom, found a renewed lightness in her own spirit. The shared grief for Officer Davis still existed, a quiet presence, but it was now interwoven with the joy of Atlas's present and the promise of his future. She often remarked that seeing Shadow, vibrant and happy, was like receiving a final, loving message from her husband, a confirmation that life and love continued. This shared healing deepened the bond between Alara and Eleanor, forging a friendship born from compassion and a shared love for a remarkable dog. Atlas's story began to spread, a quiet legend whispered among parkgoers and shelter volunteers. He became a symbol of resilience, a living example of how love truly can lift the heaviest burdens. Alara, continuing her art, found new inspiration in his boundless spirit. Her sketches were no longer just about capturing his form, but about portraying the essence of his inner strength, his capacity for joy, and the profound journey he had undertaken. The journey of Atlas, from a shadowed, burdened giant to a beacon of resilience, culminated in a profound legacy that extended far beyond the confines of the city park. He was Atlas, once again, carrying the world. But this time, the world was filled with the boundless love and hope he now inspired in others. His daily walks with Alara and Eleanor became less about therapy and more about celebration, a quiet parade of triumph against overwhelming odds. He trotted with a confident gait, his tail a gentle pendulum of contentment, his eyes bright and engaged with the world around him. This was Atlas, unleashed. One late spring afternoon, the annual park celebration was being held, a lively event with local vendors, music, and community gatherings. Alara had initially worried about the crowds and the noise, fearing a relapse for Atlas. But Eleanor encouraged them. "He's ready, dear. He's more than ready." As they entered the bustling park, Atlas, usually sensitive to commotion, walked calmly by Alara's side. Children pointed and smiled, drawn to his magnificent size, but he met their gazes with gentle curiosity, not fear. He even accepted a quiet pat from a passing stranger, a testament to his complete transformation. This was the ultimate unburdening, a majestic dog finally free. Suddenly, a balloon, accidentally released by a child, popped with a sharp, unexpected bang directly above them. Alara flinched, and Eleanor gasped. But Atlas, in a moment of pure, unadulterated liberation, merely turned his head, his ears twitching, and then nudged Alara's hand with his nose, as if to say, "Just a balloon. Nothing to fear." There was no cowering, no whimper, no tremor. This was the final, triumphant, emotional moment, a culmination of months of patient love and unwavering support. He was truly unburdened. What truly defines freedom from the past? Forgetting it or confronting it with courage? Atlas's journey became a powerful narrative shared at local animal shelters and community events. Alara, now more confident and articulate, spoke of the profound connection that had transformed both their lives. She used her art, her sketches and paintings of Atlas through his various stages of healing, to illustrate his incredible resilience. Eleanor, by her side, shared the irreplaceable bond between a canine and handler, adding historical context and emotional depth to Atlas's heroic past as Shadow. They became quiet advocates for animals with trauma, proving that with enough patience and love, even the deepest wounds could heal. The story of Atlas, the giant dog who carried a secret burden that only love could lift, resonated deeply with countless people. He became a symbol of hope, a reminder that every creature, regardless of their past, deserves a second chance at a life filled with joy and purpose. People would visit the park, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, drawn by the quiet power of his redemption. Alara, watching him bound playfully through the grass, chasing a ball with youthful exuberance, knew that their silent pact had not just saved him, but had truly unleashed the boundless capacity for love and healing that resided within them both. As the gentle twilight settles over the park, casting long, soft shadows, you see Atlas stretched out, not on a cold patch of grass, but on a soft, warm bed in Alara's cozy studio. A contented sigh escapes him, a sound of profound peace, as his large body relaxes completely. His eyes, no longer haunted, are closed in peaceful slumber, occasionally fluttering with dreams of chasing squirrels in sunlit fields. The soft glow of a nearby lamp, illuminates his majestic form, highlighting the healthy sheen of his black coat, a stark contrast to the matted fur of his past. Imagine the comforting rhythm of his breathing, the profound quiet of a soul truly at rest, knowing he is safe, loved, and finally free. This is the enduring strength of connection, a whisper of love that transcends all understanding, cradling you in its boundless warmth. End of script. Good night.